Hello Year 5 and welcome to week 7, Friday's maths session. We've made it through to another end of the week already, and we've been doing some quite tricky maths work this week. So well done for all your hard work. If you do have any problems or any questions or anything you're finding a bit tough, please do speak to your teachers and we're more than happy to go through this with you. Some new learning in here this week, but please don't worry, we will be recapping this lots when we are back in school. So your first challenge today then, I'd like you to pause the video in a moment once you've chosen whether you're going to have a go at the blue or red arithmetic problems today. And if you'd like to pause your videos now, ready for the answers in a moment. Okay, so here are the answers. Just a reminder, if you wanted to spend about 15 or so minutes on this each week, 10 to 15 minutes is great. And have a look to see how you've got on today. And again, if there's any you're confused about or you're not sure about, please do ask your teachers. So the final session of the week then, we are going to be exploring how to convert fractions and decimals into percentages. And we haven't looked at percentages yet this year, but it's something that we begin to focus on now as we come to partway through or halfway through year 5. And we will be doing lots of work on this. So in order to be successful today, we're going to need to use our place value knowledge. We may use knowledge of some other conversions as well that we've looked at so far this week, particularly tenths and hundredths. And we'll also probably find a 100 square as a really useful model and visual model for us today. So a percentage then. The key thing about a percentage is always out of 100. That's the rule. It's always out of 100. So you've probably heard the phrases before, people saying, oh, you've put 100% effort in. As it's out of 100, 100% effort in is the whole amount. So you know, if you're looking at a test result and you might have scored 70%, you've got 70 out of 100 correct. 100% in a test, you've got it all correct. So we tend to see percentages sometimes in shops as well. They reduce their prices sometimes by a certain percentage, and this is always being the whole percent is out of 100. The whole amount is out of 100. So I'd like us to have a little look at these squares in front of us, and you can see here that this is 100 square and 5 out of 100 is shaded in. So this is what is worth known as 5%. This 100 square has 35 squares shaded in green. So 35% of the whole square is shaded in. And finally then here, this square has got 25% of the square shaded in because it is 25 out of 100. So these are the percentages of each square's shadings. Because it is out of 100, 5%, 5 out of 100, 35, 35 out of 100, 35%, and this one, 25 of them, 25 out of 100, 25%. Now you're hearing me uses the phrases such as 5 out of 100, which actually means that finding that fraction equivalent is slightly easier. It's 5 out of 100. That is an equivalent fraction of 5% because it is out of 100. And 5 hundredths we can record as a decimal as 0.05. Remember, that's 5 hundredths, 5 out of 100. Remembering there, it's not 0.5, that would be 50 hundredths, which is equivalent to 5 tenths. It's 5 hundredths. Here we've got 35%, so we said again it's out of 35, and we would record 35 hundredths, so that's more than 10 hundredths, so we've made some tenths here, we've made 3 tenths and 5 hundredths, 0.35, 35 hundredths, 35%, 35 out of 100. And finally 25 then, we've got here 25 out of 100, which is equal to 25 hundredths, which is 0.25. And thinking back to yesterday, bless me, excuse me, you might also remember that another equivalent fraction would be a quarter as well. So 0.25, same as 25 out of 100, which is equal to 25%. Okay, so you might want to have a go then at pausing the video now, and all of these fractions you can see here are out of 100, and I'd like you to think about, what do you think the equivalent percentage must be? If you want an extension, there's a little problem here. Mo and Annie and Tommy all did a test with 100 questions. It was out of 100. Tommy got 6 fewer questions correct than Mo. So we've got Mo's score here. What would that look like as a percentage? What would Annie's score be if the percentage is 65? And can we work out what Tommy's score was and his percentage? So if you pause the video now. And here we have our answers. So 25 out of 100 is 25%, 43% is 43 out of 100, 92 out of 100, 92%, and 77 out of 100, 77%. We can see here, if you moved on to the problem, 56 out of 100 is 56%, 65% is the same as 65 out of 100, and it said Tommy got 6 fewer questions correct, so he got 6 less questions correct, so he got 50 out of 100, which is 50%, so he actually got half marks. So another equivalent fraction there then for 50% would be a half. So we're going to explore then what happens if we're given the fraction of tenths. How do we turn that into a percentage? And what we want to think about is, if we've got 2 tenths, so we imagine here that 2 of our 2 whole rows or columns of our 100 square is shaded in, how many hundredths is that equivalent to? Well, when we find equivalence, we times both numbers here by 10, because we wanted to get it to 100, so 10 tens are 100. So we can see here that 20 hundredths are equal to, hundredths should I say, are equal to 2 tenths. As a decimal, we'd still record that as 0.2, because 0.2, 2 tenths is equal to 20 hundredths. And so if it's 20 out of 100, it's going to be 20%. So we need to think about turning, if we're looking at tenths to begin with, turning it out of 100 in order to find that percentage, as percentages are always out of 100. So I'd like you to pause the video now, see if you can convert these fractions into percentages. Hopefully the first one's quite straightforward. This one down here is a little bit tricky, so you might want to refer back to my previous slide. And this one is quite a challenge, but maybe think about that 100 square. If half of it was shaded in, how many of those squares would be shaded in out of 100 to show half? Let's have a look then. So 21 out of 100 is 21%. 3 tenths we obviously converted into hundredths, so we had 30 out of 100, which was equal to 30%. And finally here a half, so half, we're thinking like half marks out of 100, we're looking at 50 out of 100, so it's equal to 50%. So a half and 50% are equivalents. Okay, again, if you'd like to pause the video now and have a go at these ones, slightly trickier. We've got a decimal here, we're turning into percentages. We might find it quite useful to turn our decimal into a fraction first before we find that percentage. Finding the percentage here and this one here. So try those now if you'd like to pause the video. Okay, let's have a look at those together. Let's start with 0.32. So we're looking at 32 out of 100, which is 32%, 32 hundredths. Here we've got 68 hundredths. 68 over 100 is 68%. Now here you can see we've got 4 tenths, which would be equivalent to, if I just show you over here, 40 hundredths, 40 out of 100, which is equal to 40%. And finally, just a few more for us to be aware of. If we're looking at 25%, we're looking at 25 out of 100. Now, we've looked before in previous days at 0.25 and 25 hundredths, knowing that actually if we take our 100 and we divide it into 4, into quarters, it's actually 25 hundredths is equivalent to a quarter. So 75% is equivalent to a quarter. Here we've got 75%, and that's equivalent to 75 out of 100, 75 hundredths we can see there, and that's actually equivalent to 3 quarters. So if we divided our 100 into 4 parts and multiplied it by 3 of those parts, that would be 75. So 75% is equivalent to 3/4. Finally down here we've got 3%. That's 3 out of 100. We need to be really, really careful today that when we are converting this into decimals, we do record it as 0.03. It's worth 3 hundredths, remember, not 3/10. If we put 0.3, that would be the equivalent of 30 hundredths of 30%. So just be really, really careful, particularly when you're looking at hundredths and single hundredths, like 3 hundredths here. We're recording it as a decimal as 0.03. So today then, you're going to work through your challenges, final day of the week, and you're going to be looking at finding equivalent decimals, fractions and percentages. Thinking about percentages being out of 100 is going to be really, really useful to help you today. And like I say, where you're working with tenths, convert it into hundredths first, and that will really help you to find that percentage easily. I hope you'll have a lovely weekend, and we look forward to seeing your work later. Thank you.